We're going to take a look at the homicide investigation into this now. Joining me in studio is former Toronto Police homicide investigator David Perry. He is co-CEO of Investigative Solutions Network. Good to have you in studio, David. Thank you for coming in. We talked about this a little bit during the break. FAA investigating what happened in the air, but you say homicide is taking over on the ground. What are they looking for?
Well, this is going to be a multidisciplinary investigation, and I think they will have homicide investigators on the ground doing probably one of the most important pieces of the investigation, and that's to find out what's been going on in this pilot's background in terms of his mental health, in terms of some of the reports that we're hearing where, in fact, he had notes prepared that he was to be off sick, and we're hearing a fair bit about serious depression.
Still, though, is that not circumstantial? And we've had a pilots union come out, not the French one, but the German pilots union coming out and saying that there's been too quick of a rush to judgment for this young man.
Right. Well, information is information at this point. We can't draw any conclusive findings on what the mental health status or the exact cause of the crash was, but there are too many coincidences, there are too many indicators for me to point to something else at this particular part of the investigation. You know, for example, we do know that he had some serious mental health and depression situations. We do know that depression is closely associated to suicide, sometimes to mass murder, sometimes to murder-suicides. And if you look at it, and if we believe, and at the end of the investigation it turns out that this is a mass murder-suicide, then they're obviously going to have a very close look at his mental health and whatever mental illness he may have been suffering from.
I want to bring up a point that raised sort of my antenna yesterday. Investigators mentioned, and they provided a lot of information for people. They said that right up until the last moment, the co-pilot's breathing was normal. So could that not indicate he might have been passed out in the cockpit from perhaps some kind of medical emergency and his breathing was normal? Because to me, even if you're going to fly a plane into a mountainside, even if you're choosing to do that, your adrenaline is going and your breathing would increase, no?
Well, it depends. His state of depression and his mental state could have been, it could have been a sign of his complete acceptance of his plan, which included taking out 149 people along with him in a very horrible way in a mass murder-suicide. So, you know, we don't know how people would react under certain circumstances. I've seen people be so calm under circumstances where their lives are in fact at imminent risk and they seem to be able to function. Other people, their heart can race just from hearing the story. So I wouldn't want to read too much into that one either.
Okay.
But when you look at all of the, and I would agree with you, circumstantial evidence that's being gathered so far, there are way too many indicators to point out that this was an act that he planned. This was planned and deliberate. He was able to get onto that airplane, to assist in flying that airplane, and to at least gain the confidence of his co-pilot to the point where he felt comfortable leaving the cockpit, knowing that he had no other way back in except to be allowed in by his co-pilot.
Right.
And to me, that shows a lot of planning and deliberation.
Planned and deliberate based on the fact that the pilot had to go to the bathroom. I mean, what if the pilot didn't have to go to the bathroom?
Well, I'm gonna guess that he probably anticipated a break and he waited for his opportunity, and maybe it wasn't going to be this flight. I suspect, just knowing what I know about human behavior, that it was planned for this flight. But I think he seized the moment. He had that cockpit to himself. He secured that door. From what I'm hearing from the experts, that he had to manipulate that plane in a certain way to put it in that descent in a way that wouldn't activate the computers to come back in and take control of the flight, which again shows me, again, a lot of circumstantial evidence towards intent, but it'll be a long time before we know exactly what happened.
Absolutely, and I want to thank you for coming in and letting me play devil's advocate here with you and ask some of these questions. Former homicide investigator David Perry.